Hello everyone, and welcome back to Band 7201 Data Visualization. In this module, we're going to demonstrate how preattentive attributes and the process of selecting preattentive attributes can be applied specifically to line graphs in Microsoft Excel. This week's learning objectives are as follows. So after this module, you should be able to apply preattentive attributes to line graphs in Microsoft Excel and make changes to a line graph in Microsoft Excel that reflect principles of preattentive attributes. Let's take a look at the decluttering revisit example one last time from Storytelling with Data. After the decluttering process, we ended up with the following visualization, so showing the difference between the tickets received and tickets processed over time, while attempting to highlight where the gap really starts to widen. So in order to zone in on this widening gap, we followed a procedure to help us install preattentive attributes. So the first thing we wanted to do is push everything to the background. So we made everything equal in color. We still have received and processed with larger text and wider lines in order to indicate the lines that we have. But at this point, now that everything's gray, we can decide what we want to highlight and how we can use preattentive attributes to highlight what we believe to be important. So the first thing we did was decide to change the color of the process line to blue. This distinguishes it from the received line. So in this storyline, we want to focus on where tickets processed started to lag behind those that were received. We did this by changing the color of the line and the text to blue to make it stand out. Next, we wanted to zone in on where the gap started to widen. So in order to do this, we first added data markers so that we could see numerically the differences in the tickets received and the tickets processed. What we find is that if we add all of the data labels, that it is too cluttered. So we make the decision to only keep the data labels necessary to really show that widening gap. So here we can see the difference in August from 156 to 202. Now we're going to take a look at an example of data that you've seen before, but we're going to go through the process of pushing everything to the background and then installing preattentive attributes to help us tell a story with the data. Okay, so go ahead and open up the Western Regional Dataset, the Excel workbook that is in the module folder, and we'll take a look at how to apply preattentive attributes in a line graph in Microsoft Excel. So just to review, this is sales data from the Orem, Provo, and San Jose stores. Different sales reps use different sales approaches and receive different service satisfaction ratings while selling specific items over a period of September, October, and November. So what we're going to take a look at specifically is how bicycle sales in Provo changed over time, and we're going to see what kind of insights we can get from taking a look at a line graph that shows us just that. So the first thing we're going to do is create a pivot table to help us visualize this data. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the top row and then use a Control-Shift down to highlight all of the data. I'm then going to go to Insert and Pivot Table, and then just hit OK. This will place it on a new worksheet. If you ever click outside of the pivot table area and lose your fields, just go ahead and click back in that space and you'll get it to appear again on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, you have all of the fields that are available in the table, as well as filters, columns, rows, and values. So what we want to do is take a look at the sales of bicycles. So what we want to see is a comparison of bicycle sales over time. So what we're going to do is the following. First, we're going to drag date to rows so that we're going to end up with that on the x-axis of our chart. We're going to drag the amount to the values, that's our measure of our sales, drag location to columns, and item to columns below that. So you can see that it kind of creates a messy table. However, this will produce a nice line chart. So from here, when you are clicked still in the table, go ahead and go to Insert and Pivot Chart. If you're on a Mac, this option might not be available. You might have to highlight and actually create the chart manually. Otherwise, go ahead and borrow one of the Windows machines in the GSU lab. So I'm going to go ahead and click Pivot Chart, and what I want is a line chart. And this is in fact the one I want. It looks messy, but we're going to add some filters so that it cleans it up a bit. Hit OK, and we get the following chart. So I'm going to go ahead and make it bigger, and we'll work from here. So actually what we want is a comparison of bicycle sales across stores over time. So what we're going to need to do is eliminate all of the other items that will help clean this up. So I'm going to click the drop down for item, conveniently located in the chart, uncheck select all, and just check bicycle and hit OK. You'll see that this now gives me lines for each of the stores. So in blue we have Orem, orange we have Provo, and in gray we have San Jose, specifically again for bicycles. So storytelling with data says that we should push everything to the background. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click each of the lines and make them the same color. So I'm going to go to Format Data Series, click on the paint bucket, and change the color to the theme color of gray. I'll do the same for the blue line here, and start to inspect the visual and see how we can improve this. So the first thing I want to do is actually determine what story I want to tell. It looks like in November there's a giant spike in bicycle sales in the, if I hover it tells me it's the Provo store. So I think what I want to do is actually highlight that difference. So I'm thinking that I want to bring Provo to the forefront so that I can illustrate that to a manager and help them kind of go from there, thinking as to why perhaps that happened specifically in the Provo store and the others didn't experience that spike. So in addition to a couple of other changes, what I'm going to do is highlight this line. So in order to highlight that Provo store, I'm going to select the line for Provo and change that color to the orange. You'll also see that it then updates it in the legend as well. The next thing I'm going to do is actually get rid of this axis altogether because I'm going to put data labels directly on the chart as we've done before. I'm going to make the text down here larger. So I'm going to left click the axis here and just simply go to the Home tab and make the text larger so that it's easier to read. I'm then going to add a chart title by clicking the plus sign here, so chart title. We can probably just call this bicycle sales and see if we can go from there. I'm going to make this chart title bigger so that it stands out. The next thing I'm going to do is add data markers to each of these lines so that we can decide which ones we want to keep. Again, I think what we want to do is highlight the differences here. So go ahead and left click this line, make sure the whole line is selected, and go to marker, and then marker options, built in, and I will select the circle here. I'm going to change the color to match that orange in this case. I'm going to do the same for these other lines, so left click and go to marker and marker options, built in, and then select the circle. I can choose to increase the size if I would like, so say to 8. Go ahead and do that on both. Finally, select this line, built in. I have to click the drop down for fill and change the color to gray here. Remember to increase the size under marker options to 8. So at this point, the question is, how do I remove markers that I don't want? So I only want to keep these markers here. So what I'm going to do is left click the line until I only have that marker selected. Go back over to Format Data Point and select Marker and Marker Options, and then choose None. So repeat this process of choosing none for each of these dots. Again, making sure to only select one particular data point, marker, marker options, and none. And I'm actually going to do this for this line as well, because I only want the markers at the end. So we'll say none and none. Okay, so this is starting to shape up. Next, I'm going to go ahead and put data labels on the line. So right click the line and add data labels. For each of these, right click, add data labels, right click and add data labels. Okay, so before doing anything else, I only want the data labels over here. So I'm going to, you have to left click until only one of the numbers is highlighted on the line, and then hit delete in order to get rid of the label. I'm just going to keep doing this process until I only have these 3 labels here. I'm going to go ahead and increase the size, and I can even reformat if I like. So we'll increase this to 12. Actually, I think making it a little bit bigger is more informative. Say 16. So the other thing I'm going to do is back in the pivot table, I'm going to make the $sign appear. So under sum of amount, I'm going to click the drop down and go to value field settings, number format, select currency, and I don't need any decimal places. We'll leave it like that and hit OK and OK. That makes the $sign appear. That might be too busy actually, but just for the sake of showing you how it's done, I'll leave it there. Now we're starting to get somewhere. I'm actually going to change this title so that it is black instead of gray. I will make this number orange to match the color here and make it stand out. I'm going to decrease the size of these labels as well to make them stand out less. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to make the text in the legend just a little bit bigger so that it is easier to tell which store is which. That Provo is that orange store. I'm also going to select the legend label here in the middle and change all of the text to orange so that it matches the text there. There's some additional tweaking I can do here in terms of adjusting sizes of labels and maybe trying to directly label this marker with Provo to really make that stand out. But this is looking pretty good for now. The last thing I might do is actually format this plot area and get rid of these lines. So format the grid lines and say no line, and also select the x-axis and say no line as well. I close this off. So I'm calling upon preattentive attributes in certain ways here. I've changed some color, I've added some markers, and increased the size. I think to further improve it, I would put the Provo label directly on here, which I could do with data labels. But this is definitely a massive improvement from what I had before. And now your eye can easily see that there is a massive jump in sales in bicycles, specifically in Provo. So this gives you an introduction to manipulating preattentive attributes in line graphs in Microsoft Excel. If you have any questions about this, please let me know.